Hello, Richard here from RKX Miniatures, and today we're going to be using Autodesk Meshmixer to assemble one of our multi-part kits. So, first of all then, Meshmixer. This is a program that I don't use very often. I used to use it when I first started playing with assembling figures, to pose the figures myself, and I gave up on it fairly quickly. I found it does some things okay, but ultimately most things can be done by Blender or ZBrush is actually what I use most of the time. Both those programs will do most things better. But that said, it is a free program and it is something that a lot of people have, and so it's worth doing videos so we can see how to make use of it. So today I'm going to use, I think we're going to make an engineer. So last video we did a scout. This time let's do a Soviet engineer. So we click import and we can start having a little look through our multi-part kit. So here's the arms, bodies and equipment heads, etc. So we'll start with the bodies. Now the last figure we did for the scout was female sniper and she was on her knees. I think so then this time do something a little bit different and we'll do someone standing in some way. So let's go with just a walking pose. I've got a variety of different ones we could pick, but let's go with, I'm going to go with something a bit unique. I think I've got an idea in my head of where I want this model to go, but we know what I'm like. It'll probably not look anything like it. So here we go. Here's our model. Now, Meshmixer uses different controls to Blender for navigating. So the mouse wheel, again, is for zooming in and out, and I strongly advise, as always, that you use a mouse with a mouse wheel. In order to rotate, however, we're going to use the right-click button and then our mouse. That's how we rotate or orbit around the model. And if we want to pan, move left the camera view left and right, etc., we use the middle mouse wheel. So it's different to Blender. As always, we do still have this little gimbal at the top which we can use to spin things around and snap to particular axes, but yeah, it is just slightly different controls, so we don't use shift like we did on Blender, etc. So it does work a little differently. So the first thing I want to do then is I want to rotate this guy so he's upright. Just makes things easier. So in order to do this, I click on the model, select, oh no, don't use select tool, going way wrong already. Right, so click edit and then transform. And this little gimbal appears and then we can use that to rotate. Okay, now I can't just type in 90 as I'm rotating. I have to go to where it says rotate X up here and change that to 90 if I want to snap that exactly to 90 degrees. So there we go. He's now rotated. Right, I also probably want him to be standing actually on the floor. So let's move him up. Not really necessary to do that, but I just like it. I think it's just nice to be able to look at something that's sat on the floor when I'm sculpting. It helps me just sort of just know where I am, I guess. Right, now if I wanted to save those locations, I've got to click accept. Okay, if you just then go on to do something else, it would just default back to where it was. So here we go, accept, and he's now staying put. So let's go ahead and import some more bits. So let's go with a head. I always like to go for a head fairly early on. So we go import, and it will ask us, do we want to append, replace or cancel? We want to append, and now we're going to select a head. So in my head, I want this guy to be either, we've got some cool parts that can, one's holding a cigar and one's holding a bottle. So I like the idea of him either drinking or smoking. So I'm going to go with this helmet head too, because I think that one's got an open head. So let's have a look. An open mouth. Yes, it does. There you go. He's got an open mouth, so that would work. Cool. I'm going to move this little object browser out of the way. It's useful to have, but we don't really need it for now. And now I can start again transforming this part. So again, I'm going to rotate it just like I did before, snap to the side, and then I'm going to move it up and plonk it sort of vaguely there, I suppose. Obviously it's too far to the right, so let's sort that. Let's move it along a bit and then probably just a little bit down so it just goes in properly. Right, so that's a good starting point. I suspect I'll end up tweaking that as I go, the head, because obviously I want it to be, I want to look like he's drinking, and so I'll have to play with that, once I've got the arms in and I know where the bottle is. I think as I'm talking, I think I'm going for a bottle rather than a cigar, but still. So next up then, I want an arm. I want a weapon, because I don't just want him to be sitting there getting drunk. So he does need a weapon. We'll have it up on the shoulder. It's a walking pose. So this could be a guy probably not in combat, probably just on the move, having a drink as he goes. So let's go import, append. And this time, rather than using the arms from the Soviet engineer multi-part, because we do have loads of cool arms here, but I'm going to use one of the parts from the Scout multi-part. So I mentioned in the last video that you can mix and match, and the Scouts and the engineers have very similar outfits, and the sleeves design's the same. So you can easily mix and match those. So that's what I'm going to do. So we're going to go. For me, these are all the Soviet figures. So if I find the Scout, where are you hiding? The Scout multi-part, there it is. I'm going to use one of the arms from this. Now the one I like the idea of is the submachine gun on the shoulder. So I'm going to import that. Okay, so there's my part down there. So again, edit, transform, start moving this around. Now as we're transforming, you can either use the local frame, which means that the gimbal will then move with the part, or you can switch it to the world frame, in which case as you rotate the gimbal stays still, so it's always then locked to axis. So it really depends what you're after. There is no right or wrong, it's just whatever you're after really. Right, so now I've got that in a more or less right angle. I'm now going to move it and put it up here. Let's look at it from this side now. And let's put that in line there. And it'll be up to me. I might decide that his arm might be sticking out a bit too much, so I'm probably going to have to solve that. Now, obviously, it starts getting annoying now. So if I'm rotating, it's rotating from this point rather than up there. Okay, and as you know, anyone who's seen any of the other videos I've done, I like to start with the shoulder and getting the shoulder in the right place. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to move it till I get the shoulder basically in the right place at the top. So more or less that probably, I suppose. Okay, and now I want to set this as my where I move from. Now in ZBrush and Blender and things, it's quite quick and easy to do. In Meshmixer, it's slightly awkward. So what we want to do is go on Create Pivot, and I can now click where I want my pivot point to be. So let's put it here at the top of the shoulder, like I normally do, and then you tell it to drop the pivot. Okay, and then done. So that's now a pivot that I can make use of in my model. So now when I go to transform, I can select the pivot, click on the pivot, and it will now move from there. So it's not the end of the world. It's just a little bit more long-winded than it otherwise is. But I then have access of then rotating it from here. So I'm just going to keep tweaking it. What do I think of the arm? Not sure I like the arm where it is at the moment. Just rotate it forward a bit. That cleans it up. I can sort that little flat bit here. I can sort that out later. That's not a problem. And I can sort out this little bit later. So that's probably in a decent place. Let's stick with that. So we go accept. Again, always click accept when you're finished fiddling with it. Otherwise, it won't work. So right. So let's sort out this little problem that we've created here. So to do that, we're going to go on to sculpt down here, and there's loads of brushes. And the one that I like to use is move. So we're going to use the move tool. Now the little grayed out area is the size of the area that you're moving, and you've got the amount, the strength, which is the amount you're going to move by as well. So I'm going to reduce the size so it's quite small. I'm going to come around to here. Using the tools wrong. And I want to just drag this back into the body just to get rid of it. There you go. And then over here, I had a similar little issue here, which I'm just going to drag into the body, and there it's gone. So that's that sorted. Cool. Right. The next arm then. So once again, we're going to go to import, append, and now I want to go back to, because I'm now on the Scout multi-part kit, I'm going to switch it to my engineer multi-part kit. There it is, engineers. I want another arm, and I'm going to go with the bottle arm. So engineer, bottle arm, R for right. Now you'll notice that in doing so, I have 2 right arms, and so I need a left arm. So we're going to have to mirror this part. Okay. Now, again, this is one of the things when I came back to just getting ready for this video earlier, I had to remind myself how this worked, and mirroring is slightly awkward. Slightly awkward on this program. It's not that bad, but it's just a couple of steps. So first of all, we've got the part. We want to go edit and then mirror. Now, when you click mirror, it will by default create a bit of a mess. So here you go, here's your mess. And that's just because you've got to drag out the part and then they'll appear. So we want the left arm to go here. So this is the one we want, and this is the one we don't want. This is the original. So there we go. So we've now got our mirrored part. We can click accept. But we have 2 of them, and we only want one. So what we want to do is to get rid of this one. So to do that, I found the best way to do is transform and rotate it. And then we're going to move this down. So the one which we don't want, which is this grey one down here, is below the, well, I think on Meshmixer it's called the plane. So it's below, either way, it's below this like squared off hatching thing. Okay, and we click accept. So now we can do a plane cut, and you see how it's gone all like ghost effect. That's because that's what's about to disappear. So if we like that, cut, discard half, so that's it, it's going to disappear, and we go accept, and it's gone. So as simple as that. So it's not, it's not the end of the world. It's quite easy to get rid of. It's just a few more steps than otherwise would be. So now we can transform, and we can start playing with this part to get it as we like it. Now he's going to be drinking from it, so he wants to be fairly high. So actually, maybe it is angled correctly already. Whether or not he's actually going to be actively drinking, or whether or not he's just going to be lifting it to his mouth, I don't yet know. We'll see what happens as we start to line up the part. I'm going to put it on local frame. Let's see if that helps. No, it doesn't. Let's keep it on world frame. Okay. He's got it in his eye at the moment, so yeah, that's not great. Right, so let's start adjusting this. Now, again, I think we're going to need a pivot point here. So we're going to go accept. We're going to go on to create pivot and plop it there. Drop the pivot and done. And now when we go back into transform, we can select our pivot and we can be moving from that. I think that's just going to make this a little easier. Now, I'm not too worried about the shoulder this time. I'm more interested in the bottle, because that's going to be the bit that's going to be the hardest to line up. So I'm going to be quickly getting, oh, actually that's done it quite fast actually. So if it's just a sort of, he's putting it to his mouth ready to drink, that's not too bad. If I'm actually trying to get him to drink, then it might need to be like here, and then I could move the head back a little bit. Depends what I'm after. Should we just make him look like he's about to drink? There we go. That works. And then we can worry about this joint, this arm, in a second. So let's click accept. So once again, we're going to go to sculpt, and we're going to stick on the move tool, and we're going to make it reasonably big, because we're wanting to move most of a shoulder here, so we want it fairly large. And we can start to drag now this part here out. Now, the more you're dragging things, the weirder it's going to start to look. Fair warning. So you want to limit the amount of dragging that you're doing. But obviously, we are trying to close a gap at the end of the day. There is actually another tool. So on the brushes, there is also the smooth tools. We've got bubble smooth, shrink smooth, and robust smooth. So I could click shrink smooth here, and as you start clicking around, it starts getting rid of that nastiness. It starts smoothing out the part. It could be really useful, particularly on shoulders. I use this all the time, even in ZBrush. I use this all the time. It's really good. You don't want to get rid of all the wrinkles, because you like all the wrinkles in the clothes. But it's good for. It does help when things are starting to get messy over here, and you're trying to get things to behave. and not look silly. We've got a bit of a mess under there, haven't we? There we go. Sorted that out. That's not too bad. I might go really small with the size and just pull this up. Okay, and I'm going to go back to the shrink smooth to get rid of that. There you go. Nice. I quite like that. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I was planning on moving the head, but actually the bottle sort of lined up well to the head anyway. If I were going to move the head, I'd be tempted to, to put a pivot point on the bottom of his head so it rotates more fluidly. It's not essential, but it would probably make it just slightly easier. Oh, there we go. I've moved the head ever so slightly anyway. And accept. So cool. I'm quite happy with that. Now he's of course carrying a machine gun. Arguably, to be fair with the machine gun, this shoulder probably wants to rotate back anyway, because if you look at where the sling's sitting, it's slightly off the shoulder here, where it's fully on the shoulder there. So maybe this would be better. Transform. Select from the pivot. Maybe this would be better, more like that. Just because that then sits, it looks like this is the weight sitting on here. Yes, he's holding it with his hand, but the weight's sitting a bit better, I think. Like I said, I'm making this up as I go along. Yeah, let's go with that, except I think I prefer that. I arguably need to now fix here a little bit, but we can do that in the sculpt tool again. So sculpt, move, and let's just slightly tool a brush. Let's just pull this up a little bit. Oh, I went a bit too much there. Control Z to undo. Maybe I go on the body and do the same. So sculpt, pull that down. That's easier. More control there. There you go. That's just tucked in a little bit more nicely. Right. So happy with that. So he's obviously holding a submachine gun. So arguably he should have some kind of ammo pouch. Now ammo pouches, particularly machine gun ones, submachine gun ones, tend to be a pain because they're usually stick mags, and to get them to fit right is annoying. But we give it a go. So here we go. So we got PPS ammo pouch. So we'll import that. So there it is. That's the part we want, and I'm just going to slap it onto his belt over here. So let's go edit transform, because after that I suspect he's probably done. So let's rotate this round. Let's get it just vaguely in the right orientation before we even move it. Let's put it over here and then here. Having me said this is a pain to organise, it'll probably just go together nicely this time. It is actually going on quite quickly. Right, I suppose it's useful because we've got a big flat area here. On some uniforms, it's quite tricky because it's not so flat. What happens if I put this on the local frame? There you go. That's a better one. Let's use that, and then we can just rotate this up a little bit. So I want to make sure there's no major gaps or anything. So there isn't. There's a space there, but that's not a problem because it's connected all along here, and it's connected all down there. It's not creating like a hole anywhere. And the same here. That's not too bad. I just want to get it out, get the uniform out the way of it a bit here, just so that's a bit neater. So let's click accept. Go on the body pose, back to sculpt, and then let's just push this in a bit, and then smooth that out a bit with the shrink smooth. There we go. Yeah, I like that. We can go with that. There'll probably be someone online who would tell me that these pouches should only be on the left rather than the right or something. To be honest, this is just a model I'm putting together on the spot, so I can't say that I've done a huge amount of research on this guy. But there we go. That works. He'll probably be in a lot of trouble if that was alcohol. He's probably going to... I can't imagine the officers are going to be particularly pleased with him. But still. So there we go. So we got our model that we like. So what we now need to do to finish this guy is we need to combine all of these parts together so it is one file and then export it. The question is, can I remember how to do that? I think you go Edit, Transform, no, not Transform. Like I say, I don't actually use this program very often. What's this? Oh, what happens if we hold Shift and select all of them? There we go. So you select all the things in the object browser by holding Shift and clicking, and then click Combine. What's happening now? It's thinking. There we go, and it's put it all together as one part. It's different colours to represent the different groups, but it is all one part. And now we can export it. So we go File, Export. Choose where you want to put it. I'm just going to chuck it in my downloads for now. You've got all these different file formats. I find STL binary format works the best. The STL ASCII format is quite big, and I find that if you do object format, I find it just becomes an absolute mess. It just looks all really weird. So go on STL binary format and save it. So this guy will be, oh, he's not smoking, so he's drinking engineer. Okay, so drinking engineer and save, and that will then compute and export it. So I hope that helps. Like I said, Meshmixer isn't a tool that I particularly like, but it does do the job. You can get a decent decent effect out of it fairly easily. So yeah. I hope that helped. When you chuck him into your slicer, particularly if you're using Lychee like I do, it will probably complain and it will be red and it will say, yes, this may fail. Just tell it to repair, and it should then become blue. It should say, yeah, that's fine, not a problem. Because we've been sensible. We've made sure that there's no big gaps in the necks or the shoulders and things like that. We've made sure that we've intersected everything properly, so it should then work fine. If it isn't working, then I like to use Microsoft 3D Builder. Put it in there. It will say that it's invalidly defined, and then you could fix, and it will then fix it for you. But 9 times out of 10, Lychee does it for you. So I hope that helped, and see you in the next video.